Welcome to One Fantastic Week, a weekly web show where self-employed fantasy artists talk about current business, creativity, and the all-important question, how's your week? I'm Sam Flegel.
And I'm Pete Moorbacher. You can find more about One Fantastic Week at onefantasticweek.com. We have a little episode archive up there. You can also support the show by going to patreon.com/1FW, and you can talk with other artists in the One Fantastic Week community by going to Facebook and looking at One Fantastic Week there. We're joined today by special guest Jasmine Becket Griffith, who you may know from seeing her work all over the world and being sold at retail and also on her website and convention appearances. We forgot to ask you where you would like us to credit you before we went live, but thanks so much for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
So, Jasmine, for starters, where can people find your work online?
Oh, gosh. The main place would be my website, which is strangeling.com, STRANGELING, strangeling.com. And then I'm all over on Facebook, if you just search my name, or Instagram, I'm Strangeling up there too, or just go to Google and type in Jasmine and art probably, or Jasmine Becket Griffith. It will come up pretty good.
Awesome. So
we were just talking before we went live.
Yeah.
It sounds like strangeling.com has been a place where you're selling art on the internet since, what you said, 97?
97, yeah. I was still a teenager in high school, and that was the name I went by when I played Dungeons and Dragons, was Strangeling. So I just, when everybody was grabbing URLs, that's the one I got. So I made it into my website for my artwork.
That's great.
I also have a URL that I made when I was a teenager.
Oh.
That's why Pete's Bugmeyer.
Yeah,
Oh,
and one of my
sense.
websites called Vandal High.
Oh, okay.
Not because of any great branding reason, but because I was like 19 when I made it, I think.
Totally. I hear you. So I've kept with mine, but my name is really long anyway, so it kind of makes it a little shorter of a URL to put on things.
So, Jasmine, we'll start with the big question. How's your week been? What you been up to?
Well, this particular week has been pretty crazy. Gosh, about a week ago, I was still in Germany, and I just got back home on Friday. I came back from Germany to Kansas City, my studio there, and then got back here to Florida on Friday. So I've been kind of in a lot of different time zones this week.
All right, so we're gonna have to break some of that down. So I'm very curious.
Yeah.
We've talked about this a little bit via email back and forth, but you have a studio you keep in Kansas City and your home, which you live in Florida, right?
I live in Florida, and then I have a studio in London, England, which I was at 2 weeks ago, and that's why I was in Paris, and then Germany, and then Kansas City, and then back to Florida, all in, I guess, the past 10 days.
I don't know if my wife is watching right this minute, but when she is, she's going to be a little jealous. I can always tell. She loves to travel, so.
Oh, no, I obviously do, too. It sounds more exciting than it is, really. But
So how often do you bounce between these three studios?
Ooh, a lot. I've been in the London one, I think, 3 times this year so far in 2016. Kansas City I've been at maybe 4 or 5 times, but technically I live in Florida, even though I haven't been here for 9 weeks, I guess. And I take my cats with me when I travel, but not when I go overseas. So.
Wow. And so what was going on in Germany?
Well, I was actually taking my father and my stepmother with me to show them my place in London. My dad had never been on an airplane before, and I wanted him to. He's in his mid-60s, and I thought it would be really fun to take him out to show him what I do when I'm in Europe. And his family comes from Germany, so we stopped in Munich and Stuttgart and came out through that way before we took him back to Missouri, where his farm is. So we were mostly there for fun.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, we had a blast. It was good. It was in the 40s and 50s, even though it was August. But I think I get spoiled living in Florida. But it was kind of unexpected either way.
All right. So the having studios scattered all over the world sounds like a dream. What led to the decision of setting up a studio in London?
In London, or just multiple studios in general?
Oh, yeah, multiple studios.
Well, I came from Kansas City. I was born there, and I lived there for the first 20 odd years of my life. And all my family lives there, and all my husband's family lives there, and that's where my Midwest shipping center is. That my sister and my brother-in-law and other family members run for me there. So it was a lot easier, and about 10 years ago we built a house there that's basically made to be an art studio. We did the blueprints and everything, so it just specifically meant to be processing artwork, painting, a duplicate of my studio I have in Florida. So it's easier when we go and it's Christmas time, but I can still paint, or let's say we're up there for Easter, but I can still get orders out if I'm on the run. And then as I started doing more shows in England and in Europe in general, I wanted to have kind of a base of operations so I wouldn't have to take everything on an airplane, trying to pack up all my little paints and take big pieces of artwork on airplanes or trust it to the cargo, or it was getting to be kind of awful after a while. So logistically it just started making sense in the end.
That's like, I think you're our first guest who has such a situation set up. So I guess we're a little bit outside of our knowledge base.
Oh,
It sounds so cool.
I know, I just like this. So I mean,
it's more complicated. It's extremely cool. I'm very thankful for it, but it leads to a lot of confusion as to where I have, like, let's say I started a painting or I have a sketch or something laid out and I forget and I've left it in Kansas and I'm in London, or if I have like the backup drives that have my high resolution files at one place or another. I have a lot of going back and forth, infinite amounts of little to-do lists and files where I try to keep all my inventory, and it's very confusing, more than anything probably. I mean, it's a lot of fun, but it's extremely confusing and leads to a lot of weird issues and lots of overnight FedExing of things sometimes.
So one of the things that I've stressed is that, so I've been trying to figure out this whole like making work for yourself and selling it on the internet thing over the past couple of years. And one of the things that I've been doing is looking at people who have a successful thing going and trying to figure out, without copying directly, like what do they value, what are their core tenets of what do they keep doing to try to what's driving the success of their business. And one of the things that I came across really early was making lots of artwork matters, like a lot. Like it might be the single most important factor in terms of the people who are at the upper levels of success versus people people who are thought of very highly for their art skill but don't sell as much.
Yeah.
And so the idea of having multiple studios across the world so that you never have to be that far away from being able to make your next painting makes a lot of sense to me if that's something that you value very, very highly.
That is by far the number one thing that I value, more than anything. If nobody was looking at it, that's what I would need to do for myself to stay sane in my head, is to make more art all the time. If I don't have something going, I feel like I'm floundering.
Well, that's a useful impulse to have.
Yeah, I think so. I'm glad it's with art as opposed to anything else, I guess. It's helpful.
Is it common for you to like start a piece in Florida and finish it in England, or do you tend to leave it at the studio it's at?
I usually try to finish a piece before I travel, but usually a few times a year I end up trying to take it, and I've got all these different strategies. I'll have like this big long cloak thing I wear, and sometimes I've like kept a painting under it while I get on the plane, so I don't have to put it like in an actual suitcase or something like that, because I worry about it getting damaged or lost. And it's usually
international paint smuggler. We can
exactly. I know. And then I'll show, if people ask to see, I'm like, oh, it's just a picture I'm working on, and I don't explain to them that it's my job or anything. I don't get into that, and they're like, oh, that's really cute, and they just let me through usually. But so it happens. I'd rather not do it. Sometimes I'll ship things halfway through, and I've had, most of the time it's fine, but I have had weird delays at odd times, usually around Christmas, and I just, don't know if I should start over again or if it's going to show up halfway finished, and I run into a lot of things like that.
So I'm really curious. Obviously, you have a business in place that supports having multiple studios, and you talked about having a a shipping station and those
Yeah.
things. Can you walk us through kind of how that developed or your
Sure.
behind managing that?
Sure. Right now, we do have a separate shipping center that's in the Midwest. It sounds very fancy, but it's my sister and her husband, Chris, and it's done out of their large split level in Kansas, which is in the middle part of the country, so it's a very easy place to ship things out from. And basically, they take care of shipping things that I don't physically have to touch. So they will ship out things like books and tarot cards and open edition prints that I've already signed, and they just take care of that. And that's 90% of the orders that we get. Then with things that like limited editions and original paintings, me and my husband ship those out from wherever we're at. So if I have to physically touch it, then it has to come up from wherever I'm at the time. But if it's coming from, just a book that's already been printed or an open edition print I've already signed, those can be easily shipped out by other people in my family. It started off, I just hired my brother-in-law, Chris, was my first employee other than my husband, and it was right after my sister Amber got pregnant with her first kid, and he was going to be a stay-at-home dad, and I think he was working at a bank at the time, and we thought it would be easier if he could stay at home. He could start taking some of the workload, processing orders, doing some eBay stuff, things that just involve a lot of manual work and putting things in boxes and driving to the post office. And it began with that. Yeah, customer service stuff, things that didn't need to involve me personally. I do go there, probably about 20 times a year, and I autograph thousands of prints. I'll do 18-hour signing marathons there at their house, and I'll just sign stuff, and those eventually get shipped out through the Midwest there. And eventually, his wife, Amber, my sister, he needed help, so it made sense that she would stay home, and they've got another kid now, too, so they all get to work at home. And my sister-in-law, Heather, she helps out, too, when they go on vacation. And then my mom does stuff, my sister Katrina does stuff, Matt's sister Sarah helps us out, and my stepsister Sonia does my website administration, and it just kind of grown into a little miniature empire based on nepotism, mostly.
The best type of empire.
It is. Well, that way I know everybody, and it's not weird, and it's, I can trust everybody, and I've known them all since I was a little kid, so.
Man, that's really cool. What you're saying about the stuff that you don't need to touch being shipped out of a separate location.
Yeah.
That is actually the same conclusion I came to. I'm currently using a warehouse.
Oh, okay.
Which is a local, because I don't have a family situation that is perfectly suited to this.
Yeah.
but yeah, so the balance of shipping books out of a warehouse where books take up so much space.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And they're impossible to travel with. And then just having somebody else take care of that and having that automatically processed through the orders that come off the website. And then whenever you want to do something like limited edition prints or originals or anything, just taking care of that shipping yourself. It's
exactly.
it feels like such a nice balance because you actually still have a strong connection to your audience and to your customers, while not having to personally work as the #1 employee at a shipping company.
Exactly. Yeah. It got to the point when it was just me that I would spend 2/3 of my day just printing and packing and shipping, and then I'd maybe get 6 hours of painting in when I was trying to do the other way, do 18 hours of painting and a couple hours of shipping. So it works out much better this way. And then it's a relatively fun job people can do at home as opposed to some, boring office job or something.
As much as we're kind of downplaying this as sort of shipping company thing, it's it actually is kind of fun to have a big pile of inventory and to have a bunch of people want it and to pack this stuff up and get it to people and see them be excited to get it.
It is, and I always think about where it's going to end out at. Is it going to be a present for somebody? Is it going to hang in the little girl's room? Or is this going to be artwork that will be in somebody's house for the next 20 years? I think that's really cool to think about when I am actually making it.
I get the sense that you've got a pretty dedicated fan base.
I definitely do. Yeah. So that's what keeps me going, definitely.
Keith, so where did that start? Like, where do these people, since you've been selling off your website since you were 17 as your main job, where have people found you over the years? I mean, this is pre-Twitter.
Yeah. Oh, it's changed over the years, that's for sure. It used to be, gosh, let me think, 1997. I was all on, does anybody remember Elfwood?
Oh, yeah.
I think, actually, I still have an account up at Elfwood and Epilogue, and I would do, sell artwork on eBay. I used to, when I was in school still, I'd do a painting, and I'd put it on eBay for just a penny and see what happened, and I had a live journal, and I got a lot of followers from that I would just post whatever I was working on that day, and I've always been a big proponent of just showing people whatever I'm working at on that day, even if it's not really at an interesting level yet. I take a picture of a work in progress and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. What are you guys doing today? And that's kind of my main socializing for the day sometimes, whatever social media it is, and I think that's helped get people be interested in seeing what the final product is, or feeling as if they have a personal investment because they were with me when I started on something, and they get to see it as it progresses and I get more work on it, and just a constant barrage of showing people what I'm doing that day has always pretty much been my strategy. And with Facebook, I think it's even better because I think it's easier or Instagram, to show here it is, here's the picture, do you like the picture? It's more fast sort of comments and things like that now. A lot quicker back and forth than it used to be with just a mailing list and Elfwood, or LiveJournal, or all the old-fashioned MySpace, that sort of thing.
So you've been running a mailing list around it throughout most of that time as well?
I have. I remember I started off. Gosh, it was called AOL Groups, which never made it past beta, but that was the first time that I had a mailing list, and that would have been in the late 90s, I think. And just whenever anybody said something like, hey, I like your picture you showed today, I'd say, well, would you like to be on my mailing list? And I think that's helped build a big juggernaut of people that I've been able to keep with me from one social media platform to the other. If it seemed like something like MySpace or LiveJournal was falling to the wayside, then I'd say, hey, now I'm on Twitter, now I'm on Instagram, here's my Facebook. And I've just kept a lot of the same people that I would talk to and who bought my stuff when I was in school still talk to me and buy my stuff now, and they've just kind of grown up with me.
Sounds like you interact with your fans often as well, though.
Oh, yeah, definitely. In real life too. I do a lot of shows, an awful lot of shows. I do live events. I used to try to do no more than 2 a month, but lately it's been about once a week. I do some sort of live event.
Jeez, that's a lot.
It's insane. Yeah, a lot of them are not very difficult for me as far as setting up goes. I mean, I'm getting ready for Dragon Con now, but a lot of them they're not that crazy. I do a lot of events with the Walt Disney Company, and basically with those, they do all the printing and they have all the merchandise, and I just have to show up, and I live across the street when I'm in Florida, so I just kind of show up and see everybody, and we just kind of hang out and have fun for a few hours each weekend.
That sounds easy. Wow.
It's very easy. I just got to show up, and the hardest part is making sure I bring enough Sharpies and things like that so I can autograph stuff.
So I want to delve into that some.
Yeah.
So I know you have this Disney deal. You've posted about it. Your stuff is actually sold at the Disney parks. In fact, you're the first artist we've had on the show that my Aunt Judy was actually excited about.
Awesome.
She was like, wait, I know her stuff. I'm like, yeah.
Oh, gosh.
So I'm curious, like, how did that come about with Disney, and how does that work?
Oh, well, I worked with the Walt Disney Company as an independent contractor in quite a few different ways. I started off in, 2006? I did some different concept art things for a series of like cute little figurines and things with the Hamilton collection. And I think that's the first actual Disney stuff I did. And from there, I started doing my own artwork through the Pop Gallery that's located at Disney World here in Florida, which is not a Disney gallery, but it's located at Disney, and they would have a lot of my artwork there. And from there, a lot of the people who actually handle the licensing of Disney artwork found me through that gallery and through my concept art through Hamilton, and then they asked me to start doing work for Disney Parks Merchandise, which is the galleries that are at Disney World and Disneyland, and the actual artwork you see when you go to the theme parks and all that type of thing, which is with the Disney characters. And I've been doing that for a few years now, and that's so much fun. I really have a lot of fun doing those.
It sounds like a great gig.
Yeah, it is, and it's great advertising too. I'll be in a different country, a different continent, and people will come up to me when they see my artwork, and they're like, "We saw this when we were at Disney World," and I'm like, "Yep, that's me," because we get such a tremendous amount of foot traffic. I can do a show there at Disney World every weekend sometimes, and it will be different people each time because people are there on vacation. They get hundreds of thousands of different people in every day, so it's definitely a prime spot for trying to get new eyes to look at artwork. Like a personal connection, yeah.
That's like a convention that never ends.
It is, yes.
That is possibly the sweetest spot I've ever heard of.
It's great, yeah. And I've got 2 galleries right there at Disney World and one at Disneyland, and it's such a fun place to actually do events and meet fans at because everybody's on vacation, they're having fun, they're making memories, they've got their kids, they're usually had a few drinks, they've got lots of money to spend, and it works out really good. I'm very thankful for that.
Man. So I've seen your work around at retail, like in airports and stuff. And
oh, yeah.
You're one of the only artists I recognize out of that space. Oh. Did the retail stuff happen leading up to the Disney arrangement, or did the visibility from that help sort of make those deals easier?
I think it's kind of both, because I think part of the reason that Disney contacted me is, and they told me they saw that I had a very large fan base and they had seen a lot of merchandising of my work and they thought it would work for their branding as well. And then, of course, since then, I get a lot of attention because people do see it associated with Disney or see it at the Disney parks, and then from that people say, oh, it worked at Disney, oh, she does a lot of artwork other than Disney, which some people don't realize. They come to Disney and think I just do Disney stuff, but then they look me up and say, oh, she's got lots of other stuff, maybe we could use that with our branding or use it at our shops or on our merchandise. And so it's just like a big weird grassrootsy sort of thing that has happened over time.
Where did it start?
As far as licensing goes, let me think. It started with a lot of very small things back in the late 90s. There was a lot, the internet was a lot smaller then, and there would be people who would say, hey, we make t-shirts, we saw your artwork up on eBay, can we put that on a t-shirt? And I'd be like, okay. And I'd sign a contract to be on a t-shirt. I got picked up early on back then by a few companies that sold to Hot Topic, like the mall store that has all the cute goth clothes and things, and they put my fairies on stickers, and that, I think, got me into a lot of homes outside of just an internet presence. And from there, other places like Target or larger stores would say, oh, well, these are doing well here, or these seem like a lot of people, a lot of age groups might like this too. Maybe this could be a little bit more of a mainstream thing. Let's try it in our stores. And so I would say it probably started in the late 90s and just kind of continued on, just lots of little tendrils growing into a larger empire of bushes and forestry. I don't know.
I know Hot Topics where I first saw your work.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think a lot of people did. And I was just still a teenager and a college student then too, so I was really excited to see it there. I was like, oh, I can go to the mall and there's my stuff, and I think that made me, it was immediate positive reinforcement to think, oh, if I keep doing this, maybe I could turn this into something else eventually.
Well, is it really something else, or is it just more of the same?
It's really kind of more of the same. Well, when I was a very little girl, I used to try to sell my artwork with up and down sort of results. I used to go door to door when I was about 5, like doing pictures of birds in people's houses and things and trying to sell it to them. And I've always just tried to keep that going. So it seemed like a long time for me when I was like a teenager, and when I was in my 20s, I was like, oh, I've wanted this a long time. Now that I'm 37, I feel like, oh, wow, I didn't even know what I was getting into, but it just kind of grown from there.
Yeah, I always think like the longer anybody can just maintain interest in something, like the more influence they can have over it. The idea that
Yeah.
you've been basically doing the same thing since you were 5
Yeah.
definitely puts you ahead of a lot of the other people in the crowd.
It does, but it also sometimes means I don't have a lot of the other experience that people might have had kind of leading into that as a career, or knowing what the other options are, I guess. I don't know. I don't feel like I've missed out on
I
anything.
don't think you missed out on. Yeah, I had a question before and I totally
Oh,
spaced on
sure.
it now.
We have a
Okay.
ton of questions that I've been
Oh,
saving.
sure.
I've just been trying to file them away as
Yeah,
they.
and Matt has been also silent. If you're not in the chat,
I'm not. I
yeah,
tried to, but it kept
Jasmine's
having an
husband Matt
error.
has been
Oh, okay.
nailing tons of questions here in the chat. So if
Oh,
anybody
okay.
So
has any questions about the overall thing, Matt's in here.
the,
Okay, good to know. That's funny. Yeah, he's up in his office right now where he makes all the canvas prints. He was running the stapler earlier. I told him to stop because it was too loud, but he stretches all of our canvases, all my limited editions, and all the ones that you see at the Pop Gallery at Disney and everything. So
Cool.
his main job right now, getting ready for Dragon Con.
so we have a question about
Yeah.
knowing when's the right time to start delegating your non-art tasks, and wondering when did you know the money was right and the opportunity was right to bring in someone else?
Okay, well, let me think. It was about when I was maybe 22. My husband was still working as a restaurant waiter for a while, and it got to the point where I thought if I were to delegate to him a lot of my usual things like going to the post office and making prints and putting them in packages, that I would be more than making up for whatever money he was making at his day job. And it almost got to the point it was about twice over because I was relying on that for a little bit of security in case we didn't have, if nobody bought anything that week, then I'd have at least, Matt's tips from the restaurant. And I was like, well, you know what? It's getting ridiculous. Why am I having him? If I'm thinking about hiring an assistant, why wouldn't I hire him instead of having him work at a restaurant and then pay somebody else's salary to be my assistant? That seemed kind of counterproductive. So when the money started making sense, about twofold almost, I was like, well, why don't you stop doing that? Come home, I'll show you what I do, and you can do that part, and then I'll get to paint more. And immediately I got to paint more originals, which has always been a very big percentage of my income is my sales of original paintings. Since I'm a traditional artist, I work in acrylics on wood, so those are actual physical things that I sell, and that's a big chunk of the money I get. And it even was at that time. So the more I was spending on that, time-wise, if anybody were to step in, if I were to look at it hourly, it was silly I didn't do it earlier, really.
It's difficult though. I mean, the idea of
Yeah.
like real employment feels like security, but the idea of self-employment feels like there's some inherent risk. Like
Yeah.
even when things are going well, it always kind of feels like the bottom is just about to drop out.
It does, and I did make a nice little nest egg. I've always with my business, I never have carried a credit card balance or taken a loan or anything like that. So I've never been in debt really. I mean, with a house, I just pay it off. I don't get a mortgage. I'm very weird about not going into debt because it is sometimes art is a feast or famine sort of situation where you either are getting money then or you're not. You're working on something. So you better not have a lot of outgoing payments you need to do each month. So I think not relying on that was helpful. So even if I had to go a little while and I wasn't sure what I was doing, if I had savings, then I wouldn't have to worry about bills coming in other than whatever I was buying right then or owing anybody any money.
That's good advice no matter what
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah, definitely. It's probably good for any. I'm sure some businesses couldn't do it without startup costs. This is just my example of me painting stuff in my basement.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the big advantages to painting stuff in your basement is that like
Yeah.
a lot of your costs end up being production costs for stuff that you don't really incur until after you've already started to make sales. Like, oh, I need to make
Yeah.
my prints because I'm selling prints, and there's always
Exactly.
enough markup to be able to justify the cost of printing.
Oh, very true. Almost everything we do is print on demand for the more expensive prints. We make all of our canvases. We've got 4 of the really big Canon archival canvas printers, and we do all that stuff ourselves. So until somebody orders something, a lot of the time we just print it out then. So I don't have a lot of upfront that I ever have to worry about.
So along that same line, we have a question from Nathan wondering, is it challenging managing family relationships and payroll for your employees who are also, of course, in your case, your family?
Yeah, it is. I wouldn't say it's challenging. I think I put a lot of thought into it when I was first structuring it, and I'm glad I did because it's been pretty seamless. Part of it is I've created a separate company that does my prints, then my open editions, which is run by my sister and her husband, then is what I do for myself. So they have an incentive to try to sell more prints because they are actually just paying me royalties on those, and they are getting the bulk of the income they make when they sell the print. So that's kind of turned into their sort of business, and they themselves have hired assistants to help with that. So it's kind of grown from there. But in general, I try to keep business and family stuff separate, but it doesn't really work. I think mostly it's positive, but sometimes I worry if I am trying to be a business boss person that it might just seem like I'm being mean a lot, like I'm just telling people what to do, and I don't want to do that when it's not business related, you know, with people like my husband or my sister or you know, that sort of stuff. But it's definitely a balance, but I think I did a good job of structuring it so it seemed like a different entity than just hanging out with friends like family should be.
Yeah, that's great. One quick question. Do you sell the majority of your original paintings through galleries or online?
I would say probably about half of them are done through galleries, and then half of them are just direct sales of my own. Usually I'll sell pieces myself if it's not destined for a specific gallery or for an event when I'm still working on it, because I show a lot of work in progresses, and I do a lot of advanced previews on my Patreon. When I'm early, I'll say, hey, here's a painting I'm working on. Is anybody interested? You can email me, and then people will tell me if they're interested. Of course, I let them see the finished piece first, but about half of them I do that way, and then half of them I set aside for galleries because I think doing gallery shows really helps with exposure and, you know, street cred and just trying to be more fancy artist about it.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
I always wonder about it because I haven't been a digital artist. I don't have any connections to the gallery. And I always wonder how much of it is just the prestige thing. Because like selling on the internet's gotten so good, you know, like I don't know. I'm not looking for an answer. I'm just talking.
Oh no, more than prestige, I think it is also reaching a new audience. People who maybe don't sit around looking at Instagram all day might be people who want to go make an investment in an art gallery. So I get very different people sometimes buying from art galleries or discovering me through art galleries than I would do on the internet. So it's almost like a different channel that I can put my artwork. And also people getting to see it in person is a huge deal. I've had people come up to me and they're like, oh, I see your artwork online all the time, and I'd never really thought about it. You know, it's always about like that big, it's on my phone, and then they see it in person and it's big and they can see all the little details and the brush strokes, and that has convinced some people from just appreciating it to actually purchasing it when they see it in person. So I think there's always going to be a place for galleries.
I mean, as far as seeing it in person, though, I mean, you do a decent amount of, you do some conventions. So Dragon Con's coming up.
Oh, yes.
You bring a really big show to Dragon Con. I see you hanging some really fancy originals, big frames, lots of work put into the presentation. Is Dragon Con your biggest show of the year? You know, how does it fit into the overall picture?
As far as conventions go, I think it probably is the biggest show of the year that I do. I do Dragon Con, and then I do MegaCon. Since my house is in Florida, I like doing that one. It's getting almost as big as Dragon Con, but it's nuts. But yeah, Dragon Con is great, and I get to interact with people, a lot more people there too, and it's more just people I enjoy talking to a lot and who are fans of things that I am, and I actually feel like I'm being social for a few days, which is fun. But we do a tremendous amount of sales at Dragon Con, and I think it's either my 10th or my 11th year there this year in the art show. And I'm seeing the same artists every year and just get this feeling of familiarity when I get there in the hotel, and it's kind of a cozy feeling. It is probably the biggest one I do. I do the kind of similar, but not at all similar. I do the Kansas City Renaissance Festival, which is a similar amount of people, but it's spread over like 2 months, so you get different people every weekend. which is another sort of thing. I've got like a big 2-story gallery thing that's a little house that's there, and
yeah, you rent out one of their permanent venues.
Yeah, I bought it. I bought one of the it works like real estate there. I don't know if all Renaissance festivals are like, but actually I bought it from Nene Thomas actually.
That's actually pretty common. Some friends do a lot of Ren fairs, and they've also purchased permanent structures.
Yeah. Oh, and it's nice, and we've put a kind of a play area up there because my sister runs it a lot, so her kids will have, like, there's bunk beds up there and a kitchen, and it turns into like a, hey, let's all hang out at the Renaissance Festival for a few weekends, and that's a really fun one. And that's kind of the opposite end of doing a gallery show because everybody's barefoot and has their big jars of mead, and, you know, it's just a big party, yeah.
I assume you guys' costume is a part of that, right?
Yes, yeah, we have to dress up for that one. They sometimes tell us we have to do the accent, but I haven't really.
Wait, like they tell you have to speak like a British person or something?
That's what they say, which is weird because I do spend a lot of time in England since I have a studio there, and then it just feels, I don't know, it would feel weird to come back to Kansas and try to affect a British accent.
Yeah, that's really weird.
Talking to British people, I haven't met one yet that has been able to figure out what a Renaissance festival is.
No, I've tried to explain it to British friends, and they're like, "Oh, we didn't know that's what they were going for." Like, yeah, they think they have accents there. But no.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
It's like when people come to the South and try and adopt the Southern accent.
Oh dear, yeah.
Actors try for the Southern accent, it always hurts my heart.
Oh, it's sometimes painful.
They're just doing their best Kevin Spacey impression.
Yes. Yeah, very House of Cards.
So, all right, so we have a few more questions. One, since we're on conventions, Mina Roy is asking if you have any tips for a first-timer who's going to do a big convention. She's done small conventions before, but she's scheduled to do a big one in November.
Okay. Well, I'd say one of the best things you can do at conventions is have a lot of business cards and bring a lot of brochures and things to hand them out, more than even selling stuff, especially first time. It's just good to make connections with people, and people come by. I've had several of my biggest licensing deals have come from conventions. Just they came by, like my stuff, didn't buy anything, but they took a business card. That's how I ended up with the Bradford Exchange and Hamilton Collection and several large companies I do licensing with. It's just them stumbling upon me at large conventions, liking what they saw, taking a card, bringing it back with them.
So you mentioned brochures. Is that something you guys actually do? Like you have a printed brochure?
I do. I do printed brochures. They cost a lot more than business cards, but I think it's a good way of being able to show off a lot of artwork. I have a pretty diverse body of artwork. I've got more fine art sort of things. I've got more cutesy little comic sort of things, and having all of those things and then additional information about myself, what I do, my various social media, all on one page, and people like to take brochures, and they stick out more than business cards do. Also, I often autograph them for people when they take them, and then they keep it kind of as like a little souvenir sort of thing if they weren't able to get a print or they're too busy, or at least they have something to take back, and they're less likely to throw it away too if you actually autographed it for somebody.
I see Pete scratching his chin on the other.
Yeah, no, I just like, so one of the big, so many things that you're saying are really resonating with me, and like one of the big things now that I've got a larger growing body of work is trying to like provide context for it, trying to explain what this is, why it exists, what kind of business I do. Because this isn't like what you and I are doing is not like what people think of when they think of this stuff, because a lot of people who are bringing art to conventions are working in games.
Yeah.
And they're working they're doing freelance jobs. They don't have a large body of work that they can license. And so being able to communicate that and show what the different ways that you want to interact with people are is like a really useful thing, because it's not expected. This isn't the common way of doing it.
It's very true, and I like explaining I'm just an individual artist because sometimes I'll do a show and people will think maybe I'm a representative for a larger company or maybe I'm just a sales rep for Disney or something. Like they don't understand, hey, this is me, Jasmine, this is my art. These are all old-fashioned paintings I've done, and I do these things too, and look at this, you can get t-shirts and you can follow me, you can email me, I'll answer you, tell them I'm a real person, and then I think that makes a little bit more of a connection in it. Can leave something in their head to remember, oh, that's that lady I saw. Oh, I didn't know she did that too. And it just kind of grows the brand a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Yeah, we've been trying to, for like the first couple of years of doing the show, we were trying to figure out what we even call someone who does that. And we've sort of settled on independent artist.
Okay, yeah.
That's a rough term. I'm going to brag a little bit. I think it's starting to catch on.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. No, it's a good way because I'm not affiliated with any. I don't have a manager. I don't have an agent. I just do what I do.
Right, but it's what you do isn't I mean, it's certainly not a hobby. It's like
no.
an empire, but
yeah.
It's based around the idea of you as an individual being independent and making your own work and then selling and licensing it directly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you have grown it to the point where you actually have your open edition prints being printed and marketed and sold by a separate entity. So yeah. I get the sense when I'm talking to people about the idea of doing this as a career, one of the first reservations they have is they question whether or not there is a large enough of a market to even justify trying. Like they worry that there aren't enough people who want to spend money on art. But what I've realized is that there are a lot of people who spend money on art. That people like to spend money on the things that they connect with. They like to spend money on their hobbies. That there is, when you think about hobby spending, that there's a humongous market out there for someone who's able to connect with an audience. And like the fact that you actually have separate wings and like a empire. I think sort of proves this out in a very real way. That even when it comes to specifically the art of Jasmine Becket Griffith, there is actually multiple marketplaces and multiple.
Oh yes, definitely. There's not a finite amount of room for more artists out there. I think it's just having something new to say, having something different to say, and I don't think that's the sort of thing that could ever be flooded. People will say, "Oh, the internet's flooded the art market." I don't see that at all. I think if you are doing something original and unique, something that excites people and that they are interested in, that there's always going to be room for that. And with traditional art, too. I have a lot of friends who do digital, and I have friends who do both traditional and digital artwork, but there is an enormous market of people who are interested in owning the actual original paintings. And I think that's where I've always had the advantage, is because I have original paintings to show people. So I get that market. I get people who like to buy licensed things like Disney character art, and I do little statues and figurines, and then I do shirts, and I just have a lot of different small things that if people like the image and they like the message behind it, that they are going to find whatever they're into, they're going to be able to connect with it on some sort of platform.
Right, and rather than, I mean, the other fear is, of course, like, oh, well, it's going to be popular for a couple of years and then who knows, but this is a thing that has been continuously building for you for a while now.
Couple decades, yeah.
Decades.
I know it makes me sound old, but yeah, no, it's true. I think a lot of it's because I keep painting every day. I paint 10, 15 hours almost every single day, as long as I'm at a desk whatever country I'm in, and I'm able to work. And that way, I always something new to show people every day. I have some artist friends who are fantastic artists, and they maybe did a lot of art for a few years, and now mostly they might do conventions, and they'll have the same few dozen pieces out, and they're fantastic pieces, but not that people lose interest. They just might already have those prints after a while. So I think it's important to just keep coming out with more stuff, exploring the things that I'm interested in, because I always figure if I'm excited about something or interested in something, then odds are enough other people might be too. So if I see something cool and I want to paint about it or I want to tell a story about it, then I try to spread that out. And I think a lot of people follow along with me, or it might bring more new people to me. They're like, oh, look at that. She's painting this now. I'm into this. Maybe I'll like her other artwork. And it just kind of grows from there.
Yeah, and over the course of 20 years, I mean, you evolved as a person, so clearly your interests have changed over the period of time.
Yeah. Oh, it's true. I don't get embarrassed by anything I've ever painted, I don't think, but I do look at pieces sometimes I painted when I was still in high school or college, and I think, oh yeah, I remember when I did that more, and maybe people will have a tattoo of it. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like seeing an old friend or something. So it's kind of strange, and I'm sure it will continue to get stranger as more decades go by, and I see things that remind me of a different time in my life, what I was interested in when I was little, or when I'm in my 60s, I'll say, oh, wow, I remember I was painting that back in my 30s, and that was kind of weird, or, things like that.
Yeah, we put a big emphasis on the show about people just sort of expressing themselves honestly and just, actually putting what they're genuinely interested in their art, because it feels like if someone's goal is to connect with an audience, like that has to be the way to go, right? Like
it has to. Otherwise, it's not honest, and people will see through it. I mean, I some people do a good job of keeping track of what things are trendy or what different genres are more on the upswing than others. I just try to do things I like and hope it will contribute to making things more popular because I did it and a lot of people saw it. Maybe I don't know.
That's an interesting perspective. Instead of chasing the trends that you see yourself as possibly being able to influence those trends.
I'd like to think so. Yeah.
So we have a question from Jacob Walker is wondering if you could talk about your Patreon and how that fits into your overall business, as well as any best practices or worst practices you've found with Patreon.
Oh, sure. Let me see. I haven't been on Patreon for too long. I started it, I don't know, maybe about 8 months ago or so. I really, really enjoy it. I think it's one of it's probably the social media platform I enjoy more than any of the other ones because I feel more like it's people I actually know. When I know somebody on Patreon and I'm like, oh, you're one of my Patreon people, and I'll see them in real life, and I'm like, oh, Patreon person, here's a hug. I think I share a lot more of my personal life up there than I do on my public pages, and I think that's kind of a good practice because that way I don't flood the general public with, oh, here's one of my cats every day, even though I love seeing cat pictures. I don't know if everybody else does. So Patreon is kind of a vehicle.
I'm pretty sure the internet weighs in favor of cat pictures.
You're probably right, but or pictures of what I had for dinner that night, or what I'm doing for vacation, or I put things like that at Patreon because I think those are people who are more interested in me as a person, or more interested to see what things might inspire me as an artist, as opposed to just like, hey, here's my new picture, it's for sale. So I think using it as more of as actually social media instead of a more brand platform thing is good for Patreon. And then also that's where I always show off stuff first. It's like, hey, here's a sketch. It's not really turned into much yet, but it's going to be a painting. You're going to know about it before everybody else. Or, oh, hey, I'm going to release this limited edition. You guys will probably get it before the general public sees it and might even be sold out by the time the general public sees it. So it's kind of a good combination of me being more of myself, but also connecting with collectors who are really, really serious about things. And I think that's what I like about Patreon the most.
So with all this stuff you're managing, do you ever have trouble staying motivated or getting unfocused with all these things?
No, I'm a very type A sort of compulsive person. So I'm glad I have a sort of career that as much focus I put into it is the more I get out of it. And if I go a day without painting, I start getting itchy hand and feel like I'm restless and got to do something. So at least being able to post something on social media or say, hey, here, this is what I'm thinking of doing, and then I automatically, as soon as I announced it to somebody else, I've kind of promised to myself, hey, I'm going to do that when I get home. And that keeps me on task a bit also.
Sounds like you don't have a lot of other hobbies outside of art.
Not really, no. I travel a lot. A lot of the times that is art connected. Not always, but I go out in nature a lot. I walk outdoors. We live in Florida here by a bunch of swamps and nature trails, and we go and do that every day. And I cook. Matt does all the cleaning and the more boring housework, but I do the cooking every day. We're vegetarian. I do a lot of fun, extravagant vegetarian cooking, and I see that as a hobby, even though it's something that has to be done anyways. But other than that, pretty much just painting all day.
No, cooking can definitely be a hobby.
It is, yeah.
There are ways of doing cooking that makes it more of a hobby than a chore. So.
Yeah, no, I have fun with it.
Yeah, no, that's good. Matt just said in the chat, Jasmine telling her motivation to shut up. So.
yeah, whatever.
So we do have one other question
yeah.
Asked by Angela Sasser, wondering if you ever have any trouble dealing with infringement since you have such a global presentation of work. I mean, you're dealing with European sales, and I'm sure China's involved at some point.
Oh yeah.
You got some pretty heavy watermarks on your
I do.
images online, and I figure that's probably for a reason.
It is, yeah. I deal with an awful lot of infringement. That's something I eventually had to do a couple of years ago, is hire a legal guy for full-time. He's actually retired, but he does legal consulting, and he's my full-time legal guy now. And every day there's a lot. Usually it's, most of the time it's people not knowing they're doing something wrong, and they're like, hey, I like this painting, I'm going to sell it on t-shirts at this art fair or whatever, and it's mostly things like that, and usually we take care of that pretty quickly, but sometimes it is larger companies. I've been to department stores at the mall and seen clothing with my artwork on it that I didn't say they could use it on, and that's when you need to get lawyers involved mostly, or if China. I've actually done some licensing in China now. Over the past 20 years, I've seen that very much come around from a thing that used to just be, uh-oh, it's from China, is it stolen or something, until I've actually started doing licensing there. But a lot of it, we've had to stop barges filled with illegal figurines from coming into United States ports in Florida, and all sorts of complicated things.
Wow.
Yeah, it turns into international incidents or something. But no, I have a guy.
It almost sounds like a movie premise.
I know, a really, really boring spy movie of some sort, but no. But yeah, it's something I deal with a lot. I deal with it personally less than I used to, because I just forward it to my lawyer guy, and he decides what level of attention it needs or how quickly it can be shut down, and nothing stays up for very long. Usually if I get an email about something, it's gone like in a day or two, so he does a good job. And the Disney things, of course, Disney takes care of that. If it's
I'm sure
like
they do.
Things. They're on the ball. Yeah.
Disney has a pretty good legal team, huh?
They have a very good legal team, yes.
Who knew?
Yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, no, that again, it's just one more thing that you're juggling. I'm curious, because that's become such a part of what you do. Is the enforcement of your copyright a part of your business? Like I've heard of some artists making a substantial percentage of their income on the legal side of people infringing on their art. Is that something that factors in with you?
Not really. I don't think I've ever actually gotten anything from a settlement that was really much more than either back royalties would be due, or else enough to pay my legal fees for my lawyer, who charges me $125 an hour. So, yeah, pretty much anything that I get from it, it's mostly just to get people to knock it off, and then to pay whoever to file all the forms about it. Yeah.
And do you guys much? Do you and Matt keep up with filing for all your copyrights?
It depends on what it is. A lot of it I still sometimes do myself. Most of it Leonard, my legal guy, does that. And then with things that are done through third parties, like through Bradford Group or through Disney or things like that, they handle that part of it. So I don't have to do it as much as I used to. And then, of course, I do a lot of publishing things, like with my coloring books and my books and tarot cards and oracle decks, and all that sort of thing is all handled by the individual publishers who do that. I don't really self-publish anything. That's all done through those guys.
Yeah, so we've seen this before too. So when you're doing a published product like a tarot deck or an art book, you do it through a publisher so that you can just focus on the work, and then the publisher, if they're feeling motivated, if they believe in the product, are going to get out there and they're going to market that thing for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a long time ago I used to self-publish my books online occasionally, and I do like little portfolios. And then after that I got approached by Blue Angel Publishing, and they do most of the publishing of my books and cards and coloring books and things like that. And basically they have an idea of what they want. I send them the images online, and then the next couple weeks it's in stores and on Amazon and everything. So I don't have to involve myself as much as I used to. I used to do all of that myself and lay out the PDFs and hire printing companies, but I think after a while third-party publishers saw that it was a valid product that they themselves could profit from, and that's how you get people interested, really. It's like, hey, you could make money if you did this. I don't have to do as much work. I don't get near as much money, but I can spend that time painting and making new stuff, so I don't have to get bogged down as much doing the day-to-day part of it, which is fine by me.
And it's another channel for you to get your brand into retail spaces.
It definitely is, because I'll see if I have a publisher or a licensor, and let's say they're at a big marketing show, or they're at the London Book Fair, or they're doing some other sort of trade show, or maybe they're doing 20 trade shows that year, then those are things I don't have to be at myself, but they'll have my things there, and then it's just another way to get more people to see the artwork.
So it sounds like for you, the biggest channel that you personally want to focus on is just making originals, selling originals.
Yep. Yep, just the actual painting part. That's mostly what I'm interested in. I like doing the other things. If there wasn't so much of it, it became very clear a long time ago that it would be impossible for me to keep up with that personally. But so yeah, just making the artwork, and also the connecting with fans. I like doing that, and I do my own Facebook, and I do all my own talking to people in real life, and try to do personal appearances as much as possible to see people and socialize a little bit. And I think it's because I at home I'm just there in my corner painting all day, and I'll talk to Matt and I'll talk to the cats, and other than that I don't see people unless I go do a live event. So that's kind of my fun for the week when I get to go out and do that.
Man, all that stuff, such great advice, so much good stuff here. But we are actually getting close to the end of our episode. I know it's been flying by. It's been an hour. I don't know if you can believe it.
Gosh.
So
Wow.
we usually close by asking if you have a piece of advice or a tip for the folks listening.
Oh gosh, yeah. Let me think. Well, it's pretty straightforward, really. My best advice would be for other artists is to focus on the actual craft of making the artwork, because from there, that is where everything comes. You could sit there and try to business strategize all day long, but it doesn't matter if you don't have the paintings to back it up. You're not excited about what you do, and then other people won't be either. So just try to always have fun in what you're doing. That's how you're going to spend the bulk of your life. You're going to sit there for 10, 18 hours a day until you're 100 years old painting. Make sure it's something you enjoy, and try to make it something that you are proud of and that you like to do.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward. There's no shortcut, really.
So got a few things to talk about. So Jasmine and I are doing a panel together at Dragon Con next week. Pete might be there too, but
I'm up for it. Is it going to be during the dealer's room hours? Because
no, I specifically asked,
it's late.
Assuming that this time is correct that I got from Dragon Con, it's Friday at 7 p.m.
7 in the evening.
Right after the dealer's hall closes, Pete. It's called Building Your Art Brand, which, as you can imagine, Jasmine knows a few things about, and that's what we're going to be talking about. So yeah, 7 p.m. It says it's at Grand Hall C. Where that is?
It's in the basement of the Hyatt. Yeah, the very basement floor of the Hyatt, next to where the art show is. They've annexed that big room, and they're putting all the programming that is art show related in there.
Awesome.
If someone could meet me halfway between the dealer's room and there with like a sandwich or something, that would be amazing. A sandwich and a whiskey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a whiskey. Nice.
Yeah. Just a relay point 50% of the way there. I think what's going to happen is it's going to be like crowded at like 6:55. As soon as like the minute hand ticks over, I'm going to vault the table, run down the street.
I thought the dealer's hall closed at 6.
Is it closing at 6? I think the only way it's going to happen.
I think it's a whole hour.
All right. Well, I would love to get in there and do that because I always like doing panels.
Yeah, I've not done many. This will be my first panel at Dragon Con. So.
Dragon Con's going to be exciting for everyone involved. I think people are probably going to get sick of hearing about that over the course of the next month because Sam and I always talk a lot about Dragon Con. And then I guess the other big piece of housekeeping is Jasmine, you're going to be joining us in Nashville.
Yes, Nashville. I'm excited about this in November. Yeah.
For the workshop, we have, what is it, around 10 tickets left?
Oh, wow. Okay.
And, only 10 spots left open.
Yeah, we're about to start pushing. I need to get a mailing list blast out, but we're going to start pushing that today. And it's in the final stretch now with the final tickets. And we're going to be talking about this sort of stuff, and I'm really, really excited about this because it's going to be, looks like about twice the attendees and also twice the number of instructors as last year.
Oh, cool.
And we're really excited to be able to have you here this year because you've been doing this.
And Matt too.
Matt is coming. Yes, he'll have lots of helpful things to say, I'm sure.
Yeah, like there's a lot of people who have been thinking about this in theory, and you've been doing it in practice to a very high level of success for a while.
For a long time.
So instead of thinking about things in theoretical terms, be able to talk practically about what your experience has been, how it's changed over time. I mean, so much about it has to do with values and priorities and not necessarily like specifics. And just having a lot of people in that room together where they're all interested in this sort of stuff. Our viewer count is just dropping as I'm trying to plug the workshop.
Come on, guys. Workshop.
But like having a lot of people in the same room together who all share those same values and priorities to talk about, what we're doing and why we're doing it. For anyone who wants to get in there, to have a bunch of people in the room who are all doing it in different ways with different types of art, I think it's just going to be a great experience.
Definitely.
We had awesome fun last year. We have lots of good testimonials that came out of there, so we've had enough of a good time to come back. And we almost can't believe that we're allowed to do this, but it turns out you don't need permission to do anything. You just need to have a down payment. So we're if you're thinking about joining us, now's a good time.
Definitely.
You can buy tickets on onefantasticweek.com. And Sam, who do we got on the show next week? I think we got
next week we're going to have our first filmmaker that we're going to interview, Apala Asina, and she's doing her series on I believe it's A Woman of the World or a woman's guide to the world, where she took a trip where she took like an old style galleon boat and toured Antarctica, where she was in charge of this boat. You can watch it on YouTube. And her most recent adventure, she just finished a winter solo trip to go surfing in New Zealand. So obviously it was summer for us, but it was winter in New Zealand. And she may be coming to us from a fishing shack that has Wi-Fi. That part we're not totally sure of. But anyway,
where's this fishing shack?
I don't remember. This woman is an adventurer for a living, and she films it, and she's very big into what got her started was, which we talked to her at Legendeer, was that she saw all these men going out and doing adventures, and she said, why do you never hear about women doing these things? And so she started doing them. So it's pretty cool to see what she does, and she's quite a powerhouse. So I'm excited.
Adventurer filmmaker. That's a first for the show.
That's pretty awesome.
Well, thanks again, Jasmine, for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
One more time, one more plug, so that if people want to find your website.
Oh, yes, I'm at strangeling.com, STRANGELING, strangeling.com. You can find everything up there.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone in the chat, for joining us today, and we'll see you guys all next week. Bye.